Lesson 9-4, ellipses. So by the time we're done with this lesson, we should be able to write equations of ellipses and graph ellipses. Okay. So to start with, an ellipse is defined as the set of all points in a plane such that the sum of the distances from two fixed points is constant. And then we call those points the focus, or foci for plural. Okay, and again, that's just the fixed points. So our part of our ellipse is going to be the center, the foci, so there's two, the major and minor axis, the vertices, and the co-vertices. Okay. So in general, here's what our ellipse looks like. So and this would be a horizontal ellipse. So here's our center of it. We have our two fixed points, and then this part that I was talking about, that distance. So if we actually make a right triangle here, that relationship between those terms, if we make a circle around this, is going to be exactly the same all the way around the ellipse. So that's how we would create it. Okay. Now, the distance between a center and a focus, so just like with parabolas, this is still going to be a distance of c. Same thing with on this side, so this distance here is c. So this whole distance would be 2c. And then to the end of our ellipse, so from the center to this point, so this point is actually called the vertex, and then we have the vertex on this side. So from the center to a vertex point, that is our a value, so it's a distance of a. So this whole length is 2a, and then we would call the distances between the two vertices the major axis, because it's the longest one. And then from the center to the short side of our ellipse, so this point right here, this is actually called the co-vertex. So from the center to the co-vertex is a length of b. So between the two co-vertices, this is called the minor axis, and it would be a length of 2b. Okay. So again, here's just another picture, same thing. So again, here's our center, and then from vertex to vertex is our major axis. Co-vertex to co-vertex is the minor axis. And the major axis is always the bigger, the longer one. And then our shorter is always the minor axis. And if we take these and we just flip them, this would be what our vertical ellipses look like. Okay, so center to vertices is still A. Center to co-vertices is still B. Center to focus is still C. The longest is still the major axis. The shortest is still the minor axis. Okay. So here are all of those general equations that we just talked about. Okay, so again, all of this information came from that picture that I just showed you. So here are the general equations, so one for horizontal, one for vertical. So when we're looking at these, what we really need to take away is how to tell if it's horizontal or vertical from the equation. So we have x minus h over a squared, y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. And then the top part of our fractions are still the same, but notice how our a and b switched around. So remember, a is our major axis. So this number should always be bigger than our b squared. So if the larger number is underneath the x term, it's horizontal. If the larger number is underneath the y term, it's vertical. So that's really what we need to remember. And then our center for either one is still h and k. Our major axis, we're still using a to figure out that length. And then this is just telling you the direction. But again, that should be, once we figure out the direction from the equation, that should be obvious. And again, these are just the general equations to get the vertices, co-vertices, and foci. So, but again, I wouldn't memorize these. These are just here just in case you need them. What you want to remember is your picture and what all this information means on your picture. And that will make finding the stuff a lot easier than just memorizing a bunch of formulas. Okay? And then the other important thing that we need to remember is this formula right here. So c squared equals a squared minus b squared. So again, this is telling us that a is always bigger than b, and it's always positive because we're talking about length. So for the foci, when we're dealing with c, we want to use this equation to help us find c. Or if we know c and b, we can still use this equation to help us find a. Okay. Right, and again, this is just another couple of pictures of our ellipses. So again, we have a horizontal and we have a vertical one. So in the next set of videos, we're just going to do a bunch of examples applying all of this information to writing equations, graphing, finding this information, and then domain and range.